Welcome, awesome people. There are 7 billion of us on this planet now. All women and mankind, all earth kind are now another force of nature, and we're literally changing the world. So glad you could join us here tonight so that we can share with you the power of the earth and how the earth's energy can help you reduce your energy costs, lower your operations and maintenance, and have a very positive environmental impact. Thanks so much for coming. Tonight, we're going to be joined by two special guests. One is Sean Hogan. Sean had one of the first geothermal systems installed in 1981. He's been involved with all aspects of the building, so you could try to stump Sean tonight if you'd be so kind with your questions in the chat function. And he's been a national trainer for ClimateMaster since 2008. He chairs the International Ground Source Heat Pump Association Training Committee, and he's a do it right or stay at home kind of guy. In addition, tonight we have Rochester contractor Mike Seidenberg, or Eco Mike. He's been around for a long time. He's the owner of Eco Energy of New York and LLC, and he services Rochester and pretty much all of Western New York from Syracuse to Buffalo. He's been a geothermal installer since 2006. He's got a great story if you want to hear it on the Awesome Earthkind podcast at some point. Fascinating guy, great story, and he makes house goals come true with heat pumps. If you're ready to go and you don't want to, for whatever reason, can't stick around for the whole thing, one thing you could do is book a free assessment and download your $500 discount certificate, which will take $500 off the cost of the system. Just by going to geothermalclimatemaster.com, free assessment, you can click on that in the chat function and it'll automatically take you there, and then be ready to take your next step to a clean energy future. All right. So our agenda tonight is, first, who will benefit from this presentation? Why listen to me? What's the result after you do this technology change? Where's the proof about it? The ClimateMaster GeoDesigner Software system, and why having an analysis that analyzes your current cost and shows you what your future costs will be is so important to you. The cost, the savings, the financing opportunities, and if you're ready to implement, what to do and how to do it. And last but not least, Q&A. Please, if you would, put your questions into the chat function. And we see a few questions that we've got already. Thank you so much. We'll be getting to those as we go along. And we'll be talking about all these different things in just a moment. So first, who will benefit? And this is really for families who want to reduce their carbon footprint and save money on their heating, cooling, and hot water, and leave a proud legacy for their children and grandchildren without unnecessary costs or complications. Why listen to me? Great question. So my name is Ron Kamen. I've been doing clean energy for over 3 decades. I walk the talk. I have a solar home office. I have heat pumps. I have electric cars. And to me, this is not just a business. It's a way of life. And it's my personal mission in life is to help folks like you figure out how to make these transitions and save money doing it. Because the only way I believe that we can be truly sustainable is when we have a sustainable finances. And that means saving money with these technologies. I've worked with a lot of different kinds of clients over the years and helped save folks a decent amount of money, actually, with these technologies. So it's very much doable. You might recognize some of the names on this client list that I've been involved with over the last 3 decades. I have everyone from government and authorities and local municipalities through nonprofits, schools, churches, all different types of organizations, as well as for-profit companies like Macy's and some other large corporations. And then there's a couple of things folks say about me. This is on the left, Chad Ciafrani. He's with the Oakwood Friends School. And the story with them is really kind of funny. Chad and the folks there didn't believe that they could actually save money with these technologies and that they could do it without laying out cost and finance the whole thing and have savings from day one, but they did, lo and behold, find that that was true, and they're saving a lot of money, and they're very happy now. And for over the last 5 years or so, I've been the green energy, clean energy consultant to the Bridge Authority. This is their executive director. What she has to say, basically, again, there's lots of ways of doing this, but the real important way is to figure out what's right for you. And that's why tonight we have this program to help you figure out what your next steps can be and how to make that happen. All right, so what's going to be the result? So the result is that if you go through this program and you implement what we're suggesting, you wake up on a Saturday morning, and as you're sipping your coffee or your tea, you open up the Clean Energy app on your device and you smile because you see that you've virtually eliminated the carbon footprint in your home. Your energy bills are up to 70% less. You've got 100% of your home's heating, cooling, and hot water coming from the power of the earth, from the ground underneath your feet. Your house is healthy and comfortable. There's no fossil fuels, no carbon monoxide to worry about, no explosive hassles, hazards, and a zero carbon environmental footprint. And if you've got kids like I do, they're happy and proud to be associated with a family that is doing all these great things. All right, where's the proof? So heat pumps, interesting concept, right? So everybody has a heat pump. Most of us don't realize that our refrigerator and our freezers are heat pumps. And that's because the compression and expansion cycle takes that heat out of the box and lets it go out in those coils in back or underneath that particular refrigerator or freezer. We also have air conditioners. An air conditioner, whether it's a one you put in your window or a central air conditioner, actually is a heat pump as well. And the only difference between an air conditioner and an air source heat pump is that an air conditioner only does this cycle during the summer, but an air source heat pump takes the same cycle, flips some valves, and takes the heat out of the air, does the compression and expansion, and then warms your home or your building during the winter. And it's a compression and expansion cycle, and we can go into the technology if you'd like. So feel free to ask questions. And again, feel free to try to stump Mike and Sean. Okay, and at this, I'm going to pass it over to our guest presenter, Sean Hogan, if you would, sir.
All right, well, thanks, Ron. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hope you'll ask lots of questions because, well, we love talking about geothermal. So here we're looking at, well, what is that source? What is that source for not only heating in the wintertime, but also rejecting that temperature in the summertime? And, well, it's the Earth. Why the Earth? Well, the Earth is a constant temperature. It's a never-ending source that moderates the swings in air temperature that are out there. It's a battery beyond comprehension is really what that is. So burying that pipe in whatever form it happens to take below the frost line gives you an even temperature in the winter, but also just like something we recently experienced where I live out here near the Seattle area is that when it gets blistering hot outside, well, your typical air source product, they struggle a bit. They lose capacity because they're trying to reject that hot indoor air into not very receptive hot outdoor air. So my heat pump just purred right along when I had 110 degrees here on Tuesday at my house, and my house was comfortable, and my bill is lovely. So in the summertime, as you can see here, we're taking that heat out of the house and we're rejecting it into that tepid ground temperature. And up in the New York area, you're probably in the mid 50s, I would guess, low 50s, depending on your actual location. Similar out to where I live. So in the summertime, your efficiencies are very, very high because of that delta, that temperature difference from that cool ground to what you're trying to reject out of the home. So it's very receptive. It's extremely effective. And the same in the winter. We're going to reverse that refrigerant cycle and we're going to draw that constant temperature. And a lot of people say, how in the world do you do that with 55 degree ground? And it's because of the refrigeration process. I won't get into that. That's more of a technical question when you sit down with someone that's going to design your system. But why is it an advantage? Because that earth temperature doesn't tend to get much affected by what's going on outside. The other thing that I want to point out is that when you have your typical air source heat pumps, you have a unit that's sitting outside. They make noise. You're typically landscaping around them to make them go away, but also the most efficient they become or are is the day you put them in, because they're outside. They're going to start to degrade with dirt, leaves, pine needles over time. And if you're near the ocean, well, they really degrade because of the salt sea air. So here's a couple of applications, and it doesn't matter which one you use. They all work the same if size, design, and installed properly. It all comes down to how much property do you have and what equipment is required. So you can do a horizontal trench system. You can do the vertical bore. If you happen to have access to a body of water that has the correct size and depth, that's outstanding for a geothermal heat pump. Or you can do what's called directional boring, which allows you to go underneath items that typically would mean that that area is not available for a typical trench ground loop. So that's a really nice method if that's what you have to utilize to get that loop field in.
Thank you so much, Sean. One of the big advantages of geothermal as well are the fact that you can get a 26% tax credit on the total cost of your system. So when you take a look at the federal tax credits, and always talk to your tax advisor, because everyone's situation is a little bit different. Talk to your tax advisor and confirm that you're able to take advantage of this. But if you pay federal taxes, you should be able to take a 26%, a quarter of the system's cost, and write it off and get it back in a tax credit for a qualified geothermal heat pump cost. And that's not the same, by the way, for an air source. So it's one of the additional benefits that you get with a geothermal heat pump. In New York State, we have something called the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act that got passed in 2019. And what that does is it basically starts to move towards electrifying all our buildings to get rid of all the fossil fuels that are around, so that we have a carbon neutral economy by 1990. And New York State is investing $450 million in heat pump incentives that are available to you to help make this technology change. And so, what is the Clean Heat Program from New York State? It's a collaborative effort, actually, between the utilities and the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. And basically, what it does is it offers incentives to help write down the cost and to make it much more affordable for you in the upfront cost, so that you can save more money over the long term. And in Rochester Gas and Electric, the average incentive for a home is $7,500. But Eco Mike, if you would come on and tell them what you figured out today from your hard work to get RG&E to recognize some differences in the program.
Well, on this one specific unit, the Trilogy, which does your heating, cooling, and domestic hot water, it actually maximizes the incentives. If you have a 5-ton unit, it'll get you over $10,000 in rebates.
$10,000 right off the top, right, Mike?
Right off the top.
So that goes to you. Your homeowner never pays it, and then the homeowner just takes an additional 26% federal tax credit. So 10 grand off the top plus another 26%, and boy, makes it really affordable. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
All right. So just to give you a sense, a lot of folks think this technology is just for homes, but this is one example of a multifamily building. There's a lot of examples of commercial buildings of all different size, but in this particular multifamily building, they combined solar, which is a great option when you can do it, combining solar with geothermal. And what happens with geothermal is that it's cheaper, in this multifamily building than natural gas for heating, and it's dramatically cheaper for air conditioning. Some people in this area of the state are paying $100 a month for air conditioning for the same size units, and now it's down to $10 a month in this affordable housing complex down in the Rockaways. But the great thing about this technology is that it works no matter what kind of home you have. If you have a small plot of land, if you have a ranch, if you have a McMansion, if you have a lot of land, no matter what type of property, what type of house you have, most likely you can use this technology to help you reduce your energy costs very substantially. We're going to talk exactly how much that's going to be. But the wonderful thing is that before, you might have noticed prices going up again with oil and propane and other sources of energy. So you're getting shocking bills, rising energy rates, looking at 2,000 pounds of carbon, a ton of carbon per household per year is the average when we use fossil fuels. You have no control, or very little control over your energy future. If you're like me, your kids are getting worried about what's happening with the environment. And the great part about doing these technologies is that you start to shock proof your bills so that your bills become controllable. You get up to a 70% reduction in your heating, hot water, and cooling costs. Zero carbon emissions coming from your heating system. So knocking down a ton of carbon per household per year. You feel like you're doing your part to make a difference, and your kids and your grandkids are proud of you. And all that without having to figure it all out by yourself, to rely just on salespeople for information, to be unsure about what you're doing, to get lost in the technicalities, to be overwhelmed by the complexities, to not realize how you can save money with the incentives and the financing, or feel like you're leaving money on the table, or choosing the wrong technology and having to handle all these problems by yourself. So that at the end of the program, the simplest part is that you just choose your path and you have a positive impact and help save the planet. All right, so now to the ClimateMaster Geothermal software system and why it's so important to have a system that optimizes your efficiency and makes sure that you know what you're getting and what you're getting into and how it compares to everything else. And at this point, I'm going to pass it back to Sean.
Yeah, thanks again, Ron. So ClimateMaster developed a GeoDesigner software system, and it truly is a tool as I look at it. I use it as much as a design tool as I do a diagnostic tool. I can go into troubled systems and model things, and I can kind of start to dig into, if there's an issue, what that might be, because, you know, they always blame the ground loop. I will tell you it's almost never the ground loop. So what about the ClimateMaster Geodesigner software? It allows us to model your home, the load calculation in your home, how many BTUs in cooling, how many BTUs in heating for your location, and how much hot water based upon the number of residents and dwelling in that home. And it allows us to really fine tune that ground loop and also allow you to test drive. What is your total cost going to be? And it's a pretty decent estimate. We have the most advanced hot water tank with our Trilogy series. That's the QE45 we're going to be discussing tonight. That unit comes with 100% satisfaction guarantee. You know, let's talk a little bit about ClimateMaster. ClimateMaster's got 60 years in the geothermal and water source heat pump business, the longest of anybody in the United States, as I have been told. And I think that is accurate, by the way. So the GeoDesigner software, I will tell you, is something that hopefully you get an opportunity to see. We're going to show you a couple of examples here in just a moment. So let's talk a little bit about the Trilogy. And I can speak to this because I've had the Trilogy in my house now for 7 years. It heats, it cools, it heats the hot water, and what we call load matching, because it's inverter technology. It's a variable speed compressor. So it will ramp up, ramp down based upon the outdoor air temperatures and the needs in your home. And it truly does just that. Good things come in threes: variable speed airflow. It's quiet, it's comfortable. variable speed compressor I just touched on. It's typically the only power you're going to need is to the heat pump itself, which includes the pumps that drive the fluids, which are also variable speed pumping. Why is that important to mention? Because variable speed pumping, variable speed motors of all kinds deliver the goods for far, far less electricity. And they're also soft starting. They don't start with a kind of a rumble like a lot of us are used to in our homes of previous. The QE45 has the highest EPA certified performance at 45.1 EER and 5.1 COP. I've been out on project and done the formulas, and we've actually exceeded that in a couple of instances. So I will tell you that is a very real number. So the QE operates like a highway, steady operation, consistent comfort, and low wear and tear on the components. So let's talk a little bit about these units. So it's going to ramp up and down based upon the needs in your home. I don't know if any of you were aware what the news was like back east, but I live out near Seattle, about an hour north and east of Seattle, and we had very, very high temperatures this week. Very, very unusual for us, especially in June. Well, my unit kept right up. I got calls because I'm still in the HVAC business of people that they were struggling to maintain low temperatures below 80 degrees in their home. Why is that? Well, their air conditioner, their heat pump was trying to reject that heat out of their home into that hot outdoor air. It loses capacity. My geothermal heat pump was coupled with a bunch of pipe in my ground. Yeah, my ground loop temperature, the fluid in it raised a little bit, but my efficiencies were still staggering. And my compressor ramped up to maintain that comfort, and it brought a little additional fan. So my unit ran a lot, like all of ours did out here. But also what it did during that time is if I did much in the way of hot water usage, what the Trilogy unit does is it'll shut off that ground loop pump and no longer reject the heat in the ground, but it'll reject that heat into your hot water tank. So folks, that is either free cooling or free hot water, your choice. But I don't know about you, I like free. I already own it. So now it's paying me back in spades. So it truly is making lemonade out of, from lemons. So probably not a good analogy with a heat pump, but great unit. I really think that this is just a super product because, well, I've been living with it for 7 years, and all I do is I keep my filter clean. So here's a couple of instances where the unit is sitting in a smaller space like a closet, mechanical room, and you can pipe it over to where the hot water tank is. Here's a garage installation. I've done quite a few of these where the heat pump is right next to the smart tank. Very clean, by the way. So here's the smart tank. The smart tank is made for us. It's a highly, highly insulated tank. It has about 2.5 inches of foam insulation in every direction. That includes top and the bottom. It's in 3 different sizes. It's custom designed to meet our needs. It communicates with the heat pump. So this isn't a system that just throws a little bit of free hot water in the tank while it's heating and cooling your home. The QE45 is going to react to the hot water tank. It's full on hot water production, does 100% of your hot water. I have actually never turned the backup elements onto my tank in 7 years. So it's a super system. It does a terrific job at high efficiencies. And during power outages, I can tell you that tank, sometimes I'm without power out where I live 2 to 3 days. When the power comes back on, I lost maybe 3 degrees in that tank. It's just a thermos bottle beyond measure. It's amazing. We also have a proprietary control system, and we're about to take a quantum leap to another even more improved. But this is state of the art. So this is all Wi-Fi based. There's apps for the homeowner as well as the contractor, both for the computer but also the smartphone. It's a Wi-Fi enabled thermostat. The homeowner can actually change the temperatures remotely via the thermostat. I will say this right up front, folks, please don't use setback with your geothermal heat pumps. You won't save a penny. In fact, it'll cost you. So I keep mine set 24/7 and I don't touch it because that maximizes the savings. So here's some of the application. I think you saw this a little bit earlier. One of the things that was talked about briefly by me is that you don't have units sitting outside in the elements. You're not trying to disguise the noise. You're not trying to, limit the distance away from the windows and, those locations. It also means that if there's any service needing to be done at the heat pump, well, that's all done inside the home, whether it's in that mechanical room or garage. It's very easy. It's very compact. I will tell you that, all I do with my geothermal heat pump, I just keep the filter clean. There's nothing to oil. There's not a lot to do. They truly are the most least cost and longest lived heat pump out there. Folks, I have heat pumps, geothermal heat pumps that I installed over 30 years ago out there and just motoring along just fine. Not many can say that about unitary outdoor air source product, whether it's air conditioners or heat pumps. So getting into the software, number one is you want to analyze. Number two is plan. And then execute. One of the most crucial parts about the beginning of any HVAC system is this home a heat pump candidate? In other words, will it retain the comfort? Guys, if the wind blows outside and your curtains move inside, you may not be a heat pump candidate. You may want to address those issues before you take this step into the next energy saving component into your home. So it all starts with a load calculation, and this is critical. It's not a rule of thumb. It's not how many square feet do you have. It's measurements of the home, the windows, the doors, the insulation values for your weather city. And then the contractor will put all of that into the software, that load calculation. Also, the contractor, EcoMike, for example, will have the ability to create a rate file. This is where you can determine what the fuel costs and electricity costs, and if they change summer to winter, you can put those in there because you can test drive the system. You can get an idea what you would pay using other products versus the QE45 or another geothermal product. And I will tell you, it's reasonably accurate. It's pretty good. The ability to show you by comparison the geothermal to, in this case, propane and air conditioning, and then an air-to-air heat pump, a very high SEER air-to-air heat pump. So right over here, we're going to show you that in this example, it's, a condensing gas furnace, air conditioner, sizing, and it shows you what your annual operating costs based on the utility rates that you've already created. You're over $4,000 a year up in that neighborhood for that size of a system. Here we have the QE 1860. One of the things that's really beautiful about this unit is that the 1860 is 18,000 to 60,000 BTUs, and you can limit it. In other words, EcoMike can come in there and say, you know what, I don't want 60,000 BTUs. The house doesn't need that. I'm going to limit it to 42,000 in heating or 42 in cooling and 48 in heating. This is important because not all homes have an even balance of heating and cooling, especially up in the Northeast. This allows you to dial in that comfort, whereas you're oversized in one to the other if you're trying to make sure that you have all those capacities met. So this allows you to dial that in. I want to talk a little bit in brief about the minimum and maximum loop entering water temperatures. And here we've selected 30 and 90. You see that kind of in the lower left in the highlighted area. And that's important. There's some discussion now about whether we need to move that. And I will tell you that is not something that I'm in favor of. We're saying we don't want our loop temperature to ever come into the heat pump in worst case scenario below 30 degrees. And if we have an anomaly where we have some very, very hot, consistent weather outside, we don't want that entering water temperature coming back from the loop field to be higher than 90. Why do we do that? Well, it gives you elbow room for those cases like I just experienced where we had unheard of temperatures for 5 days out here. If I had short looped it, in other words, I said, I'm going to go down to 25 degrees or I'm going to go up to 100 degrees, it would have affected my capacity, the performance, and it might have affected my comfort level. So That is an important component of making sure that you, the homeowner, get what your expectations are, is good energy savings and comfort in those conditions. And the QE45 can deliver it as long as you provided for the duct delivery system and the ground loop. So here we're showing that you have the smart tank. That's the only one you can check with the QE45. And, you know, by comparison, let me move this little picture box here. By comparison, that same house with a QE45 and 15 feet of vertical bore loop, that same house costs $750. That's really hard to beat. You know, when you start to line up those cost differences, the decision making becomes really, really easy. So here in the report, you can see it breaks down those three system costs: heating, cooling, hot water. This is based on the number of people in the home, but also what is the total cost, and then it breaks it down into a monthly cost, because a lot of us, well, we're payment buyers. If you know, we need to do some financing, this becomes real easy. The other aspect, what incentives do to that bottom line as well, and that really starts to drive this down. So I can't say enough about the QE45. And by the way, that ground loop, that's 100-year pipe. It's no one on this podcast is going to ever see the end of the life of the pipe that we use. So it's a system that's here to stay.
Thank you, Sean. So to just summarize this, guys, to just give you a sense, right? If you take a look at a propane with a 91% efficiency, it's about the same actually on the oil side. You're looking at $349 a month, or about $4,100 a year. You start to add up over time. Obviously, it adds up quicker and faster and more. If you look at an air source heat pump, you're going to save a decent amount of money. I mean, it's almost half the savings, right? From $349 down to $165, from $4,100 down to $1,900. And you start to add up those savings over time. But the great thing is that when you've got the geothermal and it's supplying all your heat, hot water, and air conditioning, your monthly cost is going down to about $60 a month, $750 a year. You start adding up the operating costs over 5 years, 10 years, however long you're figuring that you're going to be in that home. And boy, you know, the savings add up to dramatic. I mean, you could buy a couple of cars for the amount of savings that you're going to have over the next couple of years. So pretty substantial. And the great part as well now is that there's financing, right? So there's loans. One of the package loans is up to $50,000. You can get extended fixed rate terms for 2 to 20 years. Rates anywhere from 3 to 9% annual per year, depending upon your credit history and how long you're going out, and et cetera, et cetera. You can do no interest. Defer your payments for 6, 12, or 18 months. So if you're waiting for that 26% federal tax credit, you can have a loan with no interest. And then once your tax credit check comes back, boom, pay it off and you're good. And you can also do equal payments on various different levels. And the nice part as well is it's not a hit on your credit report until after you do the financing. So when you're figuring everything out, no hits on your credit report if you decide not to go forward for whatever reason. So some great options, and definitely check out all the options with your contractor to make sure you get the one that works right with you. All right, so if by chance you are ready to implement the next steps, what you need to know is, first, book a free assessment. Let somebody come out. Eco Mike, if you're in his territory, come out, or another contractor come out, and make sure they model your house. They do a load calculation. They identify, based on your house, how much energy you're losing in various different pieces, and do an assessment that compares what the various costs would be, what your current costs are, and what the cost will be with either this system, or if you're looking at something else, let them model that too. So you see what the total cost is going to be. If by coming here tonight, you just click on this free assessment form, you'll also get a $500 discount off the price of the system. So in addition to whatever the utility incentive is, plus the 26% federal tax credit, you got another $500 off because you came and you checked out this program tonight. And then get ready to take your next step to have a clean energy future. All right. So we're going to go into the question and answer section, and we've got a few here. Again, this is how you get the free assessment. It's in the chat box. And one of the questions are, my goals are to treat energy holistically and use geothermal heat pumps to eliminate fossil fuel usage. You're in the right place. Thanks so much. In a typical home, how much tonnage can be saved by insulating with foam products? Mike, Mike, you want to take a crack at that? And if the tool can help, that would be great.
Well, I don't know, is to be honest with you, because by insulating with foam products, meaning if you like spray foam the house, is that the intent?
I guess, it's a question, but yeah. So if you have a typical house and now you added foam insulation, is that a good move? Not a good move?
Well, I did it myself this spring. I have a cabin that I stay at, and we've decided to make it year round, and we gutted it and completely spray foamed it, and I heat 950 square feet with just an 18,000 BTU geothermal.
So I guess it does make sense.
It does, as long as you have the availability to get to the walls.
Okay. So you got to get to the walls, and it makes certain circumstances. Okay. And by the way, is that something that you do, or you have contractors that do it? Or
I do. I do have a spray foam division.
Okay, cool. They need help with PACE financing. And is that something you can help with? Property assessed clean energy.
I don't know that one.
Ah, okay. Well, you should find out about it. Basically, it's a way for people to finance their projects and have it not be a loan against their credit, but actually it becomes like a property tax in some sense. It's attached to the property, and it's being done in various different counties and various different localities across the country. And it's a way that sometimes there's lower cost financing, and because it's attached to the property, it doesn't show up on your balance sheet per se. It just becomes an operating cost. So it's an interesting thing to check out. What are the costs for maintenance per year on these systems, Mike?
None. Just change the air filter.
Ah, well, so basically minimal, eh? All right. Here's a few other ones. Let's see. I want to replace the 20-year-old geothermal system that's already in my house. Can I still get the tax credit and the rebates for replacing my system?
Absolutely.
That's a good
answer.
No
problem at all.
I like that answer. It's a great answer. Thank you. All right, I have uncomfortable rooms in my house. Will this new system make these rooms warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer?
Well, the short answer is possibly. The question is, why is the certain room colder or warmer? And that during the energy audit and heat loss calculation, we would determine why that room isn't being satisfied. So if the reason is not enough airflow or too short of an airflow cycle time, that would help with it. If otherwise, there might be some easier things we can do, like put insulation targeted in certain areas to make the rooms balanced. Maybe it was never set up correctly to begin with.
Great questions. Great answers. Thank you, Mike. How do I determine how much of the pipe should be put into the ground to achieve the best efficiency?
That's an easy one. That's my job. We use the the GeoDesigner does that for us.
So
and many thousands of hours reading.
So okay, so I've got a house. So what are you looking at with my house? You're looking, I guess, how big my house is, how much area there is, how many windows I got, where I'm losing the heat. Is that part of it? What else?
How big the windows are, where they're located, solar heat gain, insulation values in the walls, airflow infiltration losses. We use a blower door. We can't right now because of COVID. We're still restricted on that, but we can calculate pretty close. All the things, exposures, how much of the house is exposed to the ground. Just every part of the house needs to go into the calculation to get it accurate.
So, folks, one of the things that I urge you to do, no matter what you decide to do after tonight, is when you have an assessment done, have them model your house, do a load calculation, do all the calculations that Mike just talked about, and have them produce your annual energy costs so that you know that the data that's going in there is what you're actually winding up paying. Because by modeling your house now, you'll now have a custom presentation for your house. And when you look at your alternatives, you'll then be able to evaluate what's the best option for you over time. So no matter who does it or what you decide to do after this, make sure you get this heat load calculation and energy model that models it based on your cost to come up with what you're currently paying, and then evaluate the alternatives for what you can do that's going to make a difference and have an impact. And you'll be able to see. All right, I have a well that I can use for my house water. Can I use this well for geothermal as well?
Potentially. Just like everything else, there's no straight answer, yes or no. If you are on an aquifer with an endless supply of water and we have somewhere that we can remove the water, it's called a pump and dump system. And you can do very, very high efficiency geothermal with that. If your well runs dry, you don't want to run out of water in the middle of, that's what you use to heat your house. So that's all part of the evaluation, has to be done accurately. Otherwise, people get very mad at you.
So one of the things I really like about the closed loop system compared to an open loop or a pump and dump system is that in a closed loop, you're just sending the same fluid down. It's just circulating around, and all you're doing is exchanging the heat. With a pump and a dump, basically you're taking in this water and then you're dumping it back out. And as you said, Mike, you have an issue with, the question is, do you have enough water that's going to be able to handle that amount of water coming in and then going out? Do you have an issue with where the water is going and being dumped afterwards, either for yourself or with the town if you're hooked up to a public septic system? And then the other issue too is sometimes there's sediment in the water, and that's created a lot of problems for a number of people, because you also then have to change that filter for a pump and dump system more often, right? You have to change the water filter and make sure that doesn't get clogged, right?
Well, I usually use a heat exchanger. I don't like putting straight well water running through my equipment. I just use a pool heat exchanger in between and just isolate.
Okay, so you don't have the sediment issues that way?
Correct.
Okay, that's
And
great.
if I'm going to have a sediment issue, it's in a pipe that's that big around. It's not that big a deal.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right. I have heard that the drilling makes a big mess of my yard. How is this getting cleaned up?
By your landscaper. It does make a mess. We get it back as flat as we can, but you will need landscaping.
So if you do this system with whoever you do it, one of the things is to make sure that you're clear about the fact that at the end of it, they're going to basically put the ground flat, and then whatever you're going to do with it after that, can they talk with you about options, Mike, or how does that work?
Oh yeah, I mean, I do have landscapers that I've worked with. It'll just depend on geographic area. Whereas I can get in the truck and take my crew and go 60 miles, you could probably find a better landscaper closer than 60 miles.
Okay, so if you don't have your own landscaper, your contractor might be able to help you depending upon what your situation is and what you want to do. Do I take it that most people just throw grass seed down and they call it a day, or?
I wouldn't say that.
No.
It'll depend on the kind of yard, the area we're digging. A lot of houses, if we're in a rural area, they have a scrub area, and that's where we'll do our digging. So when we're done, it can just be scrub again.
Right.
But if it's in the middle of your yard, yeah, you'd probably want to lay some topsoil down and have the little tiny rocks removed. Or
there we go. Thank you very much.
For years, I made the statement to the homeowners that a lot of what Eco Mike just said is just spot on. But I always told them, when I leave, it's not going to be a golf course. So you will need to make it into the yard you want after we're done, because it's a disturbing process to the vegetation in the soil, and once it's in and it's corrected, you're done with it. One time, one and done.
Cool. All right. So another question here is, how deep do you have to place the horizontal borings, and how deep do you have to do with the vertical ones? And is it the same loop length? Great question.
That'll actually depend on the connectivity of the ground you're dealing with. So I actually used to drill horizontally when I first started. and it was just not sustainable to keep that expensive of a rig for as often as I could run the horizontal. So I got away from it. But for a horizontal bore, I'd usually go between 6 and 12 feet because that's where my sond would still locate, and I didn't hit too much hard pan. Depends on the area you're in. Also depends on how deep you are to bedrock. Vertical, you tend to go 100 to 150 feet per ton. I like to go 150 to 175 if I can. So the loop lengths are going to be shorter on vertical because the ground is warmer, deeper, and you have less surface temperature change. It's all whatever we can do is the right thing for the job. You find out what we need to get for heat, then we figure out the most cost-effective way to get that much heat transfer, and that's the one that we recommend because we don't get extra points for going over. We just need to get what you need.
Excellent. Thank you. So as an FYI, this question is separating the loop part with a 100-year useful life combined with the mechanical part with a 20-year mechanical elements provides a 50-year allowable finance term and a PACE program. Wow. So probably limited to 30 years by statute, but the point being a 30-year payment allows payments to be more than offset by the energy savings, and you get paid every year for going green. Hey, thank you so much, Gerard. That was an awesome piece on the property assessed clean energy program. All right, a couple other ones. Let's see. I got to go back here. How long does it take to install a geothermal system, Mike?
Generally speaking, if we're doing a ground loop, all begin to end is about a week. Just depends on how big it is. We usually separate the digging from the installation so we have minimal loss of function time for the house. So we don't put in the main equipment until the ground loop is done. And then it's a day.
So basically about a week for the construction, but then there's sometimes permits to get and that sort of stuff and all things like that lined up, or?
Oh, yeah. That's Maggie does that. Yes.
All right. This question is, I've been looking at the website, and what's the difference between a variable speed Trilogy, and is that better than a 2-stage unit?
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, the 2-stage unit, although they're very good and very popular, they have a difficult time holding a candle to the variable speed because the variable speed can match loads. And again, as I mentioned earlier, oftentimes up in the Northeast, you'll have a higher heating load than a cooling load, depending on your location. So you'll need more BTUs in the wintertime. And if you drive that amount of BTU in cooling, you may end up with a bit of discomfort because it doesn't run long enough to remove the moisture out of the air. So it starts to get that potentially that little bit of a clammy feel. So the variable speed will match what the need is in the home. And if you have times of high humidity, this thing is unmatched because we have such tight control through our technology inside that cabinet. We can slow down the airflow, still providing the cool air into the space, but that allows us to wring more moisture out of the air, which makes it feel cooler in the house and far more comfortable. So it's almost adaptive, really, by nature, by design, to what's going on outside and inside your home. So during the hottest weather, my compressor was ramped up to almost 80% based on the limit that I put on it. And today it's been running at 30% because, it's back to our normal, mid 70s. So it responds to what you need. And the fan follows it. So it's comfort, quiet and savings just unmatched. The 2 speeds are still very good. But the QE is that next quantum leap.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. Okay. Does the hot water production of the Trilogy require a larger and more expensive loop? Great question.
No. Same loop.
Yep.
Same loop.
Same loop. And if it's cooling, you're not even running the loop.
Yep.
Aha. All right. And how much should this system cost? The ultimate question.
It should cost nothing. It should be so wonderful that everyone gets one for free. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen.
Come on.
I always give people a range. My goal is to get, with the incentives and rebates, to net cost at the end of the day, to be as close to 10,000 as I can get.
Cool. So between the utility incentives and the 26% federal tax credit, awesome. Very cool. All right. So one of the questions is, have you built any ClimateMaster home systems, and could it save money? Mike?
Have you built any?
It says, have you built any ClimateMaster home systems for 2 or
I've
4?
installed.
Oh, for 2 family homes. I see. Sorry about that. Thank you, Sarah. For 2 family homes, or 4 or 5 family homes.
Yes, I have. Matter of fact, we're doing one right now, which is not really a 2-family, but it's a home with an in-law. So with the Trilogy system, they actually have a complete zoning system that integrates with it. So you can treat the entire thing as if it was 2 complete systems. You put a separate thermostat over there, a separate thermostat over there, and away you go. If you're on a 2-family home, so we've done them with 4-family homes where you just build one ground loop size for the entire load, and then everybody pulls off of there. It's basically can be piped the same way as a traditional cooling tower could be on a multifamily.
Cool. And in some ways, there's some synergies by doing that, right? Because one family may be needing a little more heat, another needs a little more cooling. Is that true? That it kind of balances each other out a bit, saves some more?
It does. They all share. A BTU is a BTU. Up one is down there.
Outstanding. Excellent. Thank you so much. And I think we're at the end of the questions right now. For folks who want to sign up, again, here's how you get that free assessment. It's in the chat box at the top. And if you don't hear from a ClimateMaster installer within 5 days, and I'll tell you, if you're on this one and you're seeing this and you're participating in this, and you don't get a call from Eco Mike within 5 days, if you're in the Rochester, Syracuse to Buffalo kind of corridor area, call or contact Michael Murphy at ClimateMaster, and he'll be sure to get a hold of you. That's mmurphy@climatemaster.com, because ClimateMaster is very serious and committed to making sure that your experience in this whole process is excellent, and as am I. Thank you all for coming. Mike and Sean, you want to say a last word here?
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming. And these questions were great. I've been on a lot of these webinars. These are some of the best questions I've seen. And I had not heard of this PACE program before. So now I got something else to do tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a great program. And thank you so much, Gerard, for sharing that. And thank you, Sarah, for your questions as well. And thank you, everybody, for all your outstanding questions and for coming. And Sean, any last words of wisdom from you, sir?
Well, thanks for hosting, and this is very worthwhile. And I got to say, anytime that everybody walks away learning something is a win-win. So 2 thumbs up.
There we go. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for taking your next step to have an impact and save yourself some money along the way. Again, I'm Ron Kamen with Earthkind Energy Consulting, and I'm also host of the awesome Earthkind podcast. If you'd like to hear some other folks doing good stuff on a whole range of issues, including geothermal, but also solar and efficiency and electric vehicles and such, that's the awesome Earthkind podcast. It's on all your major podcast platforms, or on the awesome Earthkind website. And you can even hear Eco Mike tell his story, which is really a great one. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night all. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Be well.